Most people think identity changes slowly. It doesn't. It changes quietly. And then suddenly you realize the person your family still sees is someone you no longer are. Not because you rejected them, not because you wanted distance, but because life reshaped you in ways they didn't witness. You notice it in small moments first. You go home and conversations feel slightly misaligned. They talk to you using a version of you that stopped existing years ago. They reference fears you've already outgrown, dreams you've already buried, limitations you've already surpassed. And you feel something strange. Not anger, not sadness, just distance. Not from them, from who you used to be. You realize something quietly irreversible. You cannot fully return to the person you were before you left, because that person existed inside a life you no longer live. And for the first time, you begin to understand something unsettling. Identity doesn't travel intact. Parts of you expire along the way, and without realizing it, you've been carrying those expired versions with you, like souvenirs from places you can never return, like sunsets stored in a backpack. Endings you never formally acknowledged, but never truly left behind. This quiet separation between who you were and who you've become sits at the heart of a backpack filled with sunsets by Ifeanyi Ogbo, not as a dramatic event, but as a slow, almost invisible evolution, the kind that happens while you're busy surviving, while you're adapting, while you're becoming someone your past could not have predicted. The book doesn't present change as a moment. It presents it as accumulation, a gradual layering of experience that reshapes how you see yourself and eventually reshapes who you are, until one day you look behind you and realize something unsettling. You've outgrown versions of yourself that once felt permanent. For most of human history, identity was stable, not necessarily easy, but stable. You were born into a place that defined you, a family structure that anchored you, a community that reflected you back to yourself. Who you were existed inside clear boundaries. But modern African and diaspora life disrupted those boundaries. Migration, education, urbanization, globalization. These forces created mobility, not just physically, but psychologically. For the first time, entire generations began leaving environments that once defined their identity. And when you leave the environment that formed you, something subtle happens. You don't just move forward, you detach from the conditions that made you who you were. Your survival strategies change, your emotional responses evolve, your sense of possibility expands. And slowly, without realizing it, you become someone your original environment no longer fully understands. Not because it rejected you, but because it didn't witness your transformation. Identity, once anchored in place, becomes something fluid, something shaped by movement, something shaped by distance, something shaped by sunsets. You see this everywhere now. The child who leaves home and returns speaking differently, thinking differently, reacting differently. The parent who still sees vulnerability where resilience has replaced it. The adult who returns to familiar spaces and realizes they no longer feel familiar, not because the place changed, but because they did. You see it in diaspora families, where one generation survived by preserving identity, and the next survives by reshaping it, where tradition offers stability, but evolution demands transformation. And neither is wrong, but they create different versions of reality. You notice it in conversations that feel slightly misaligned, in moments where you hesitate before expressing who you've become, not because it's false, but because translating identity across environments is exhausting. And somewhere along the way, you begin to understand something quietly destabilizing. You are no longer becoming who you were meant to be there. You are becoming who your current life requires you to be here. What a backpack filled with sunsets reveals is that this process is not loss, it's accumulation. Most people assume they're carrying memories, but what they're actually carrying are expired versions of themselves. Versions shaped by environments that no longer exist. Versions built for survival conditions that no longer apply. And the instinct to carry them is deeply human, Because identity doesn't disappear, it layers. Every version of yourself still exists inside you, just no longer in control. This is why change can feel disorienting, not because you've lost yourself, but because you've multiplied. You are no longer a single, stable identity. You are a collection of adaptations, a record of everywhere you've been, every sunset you've survived, every ending that made continuation possible. And slowly, you begin to realize something most people never fully articulate. You didn't lose who you were. You outlived them. Most people don't notice when it happens because identity doesn't collapse overnight. It fades, gradually, quietly, until one day you realize the person who started this journey no longer exists. Not because they were erased, but because they were transformed. And everything they were became part of someone new, someone your past could not have predicted, someone your old life could not have contained. Maybe the goal was never to remain the same. Maybe the goal was always to become someone your past could not hold. And maybe the sunsets you carry are not reminders of what you lost, but evidence of how far you traveled. Not weight, but proof. Proof that you didn't stay where life left you. Proof that you kept becoming, long after the version of you that started could no longer continue.